research project was on the Chicano walkouts of 1968. However, today I'm going to cover both the walkouts and why education is important. Education. Education is a passport to the future. For tomorrow, it belongs to those who prepare for it today. Malcolm X. Since the moment we are placed in school systems, we are told that education is important. And even today, as we are all sitting here, we have this idea in our head that if we skip class and if we didn't receive this education, we would fail. America is built on this idea that education is important, and without it, you will not succeed. However, during the 1960s, East Los Angeles schools had a dropout push-out rate of almost 50%. Mexican American students were categorized as mentally retarded and emotionally disturbed. School buildings were in decay. Teachers were largely insensitive to the needs of the working class Americans. Many of these individuals had gone through concerns over their old campuses, overcrowded classes, unfair corporal punishments for speaking Spanish, the lack of their college preparation, the lack of relevant cultural courses, teachers who were poorly trained, had no sympathy, or were racist. Many of these students saw the differences within their education and decided that at some point this was no longer acceptable, that it could not carry on into the future, and that they needed change. So in 1968, over 15,000 students followed in March of that year, walking out of mostly Chicano schools in East Los Angeles to protect the low quality of their education. These issues went on to affect not only them in education, but in the lives of their future generations, and the reparations made towards their cause were not immediate. But we hope that with time, reparations could be made by adjusting local control funding formula to incentivize their districts and to improve student outcomes that go beyond setting achievement targets and push them to improve educational systems for Latino students. One of the initial struggles that these students had to face were that they were being held back from having what they believed to be their American dream. A former student activist named Moctezuma Esparza, who gave their testimony on the Sal Castro and the 19 East LA walkout documentary, said, "Our struggle was to get an education. We are human beings. We have potential. We want to have a life. That is part of the American dream." He talks about their struggle and how difficult it was to understand that they even had to fight for this because they were human beings just like any others. Many of the students wanted to pursue an education so that they could have a better chance at a better life. This better life being the American dream, however, they were not able to obtain that. The students in these high schools were not informed about college. No one ever sat down to talk about to them what college was and why it was important. They were seen as nothing but house cleaners and street beggars. Teachers accepted that their brown students would take out jobs that required their hands and not their minds. And their parents did not hold out any hope to see their high school students become doctors because they knew that they just wouldn't. There was no expectations, and no expectations led to no growth and no change. Castro, however, did not want to accept that this was all there was for his students. He brought to Lincoln High School the Mexican American Youth Leadership Conference with both high school and college students. They then formed the Chicano Coalition and presented the school board with demands for a broader curriculum, more ethnic studies, Mexican American courses, teachers, counselors, and even more schools. During these efforts, they were provided with nothing, so East LA high schools protested. My grandma's sister, Gloria de Quiñones, said that when these protests first occurred, they were nothing but peaceful, but they were just students. Most of the people protesting were high schoolers, and they wanted no harm, but after a couple days, the police came and took many of them into their hands to physically beat them. She recalls being spat in the face by people who did not support their cause and was called vulgar names while she walked the streets during this time. From the movement, and really what I want us to notice is that it was not just high school students. There were teachers, aunts, uncles, and parents who were walking out with signs because they wanted to see a change for Chicanos in education. Despite many days of walkouts and much support, the board did nothing for many of them. The walkouts felt like they were for naught, and Sal Castro was arrested for conspiring to incite these walkouts and was sentenced to 66 years of prison. Chicanos then staged a sit-in that became a sleepout at the school board offices, and they demanded for Sal Castro to come back and continue demanding for their educational rights. There was this constant push, and eventually the school board gave in to bring back Sal Castro. The school board had done more to close the equity gap immediately after the Chicano movement, and the percentage would surely be higher. The efforts and sacrifices made by these teachers and students were not repaired or even repaid. Latinos benefit from institutions and programs like the Puente Project and the Enlace program, which increases the number of educationally disadvantaged students and caters to their success, which local control funding does when they adjust school funding for those students like Latinos who are in need of it. Reparations for these students need to start by simply adjusting school fundings to benefit them so that they can improve outcomes and Latinx success. Although fixing the damages done through the educational system doesn't entirely mean we can repair the lives of the students who were in the walkout, it does in turn repair the damages for the history that has been long gone. It's not pointless for us to educate and, help these future generations because it is almost impossible to repair the lives of every single student, but with repairing the lives of their current future generations, the educational system would be ensuring that young Chicanos today will not have to undergo what their ancestors did. Well, I believe that we should care about these movements and we should care about why education is important because we benefit from programs like Puente. These are programs we benefit from. Without them, we wouldn't have Sandras and Alejandras, people who have uplifted us and helped us better our education, things that these high schoolers did not have at the time. So it was thanks to them that we are here today. So thank you all for listening, and I hope it was informational and not too boring. Thank you. Bye.
That wasn't goodbye. I wish it was. However, this is my works cited page, and if you guys have any questions regarding the sites that I used or regarding the information provided, please feel free to ask. Once again, thank you all for listening to my presentation.